What is up, guys? Welcome into episode number 88 of the Loose Sports Talk podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Hannaford. He is Daniel Hinkamp, and we have a full episode for you guys this evening. And Daniel, first off, pleasure to have you back on the podcast tonight. And we are nearing Thanksgiving, so happy early Thanksgiving, my friend.
Well, happy early Thanksgiving to you, Ethan. I'm very happy to be back. Took a little break so we could get some other important segments and topics talked about, but looking forward to this one.
Yeah, things are busting right now. You know how it goes. And, I have to mention that we have to get through this first, because this is a very important question, Daniel. And honestly, the people, they will take a lot from this question. This is very important. They need to know the answer to this.
Okay.
What is the best Thanksgiving food?
Oof. Does dessert count?
Dessert. Does dessert count? No. I put dessert in its own special category. I find it okay to give that as an answer, but I need like an actual meal food.
Stuffing.
Okay. I'm about it. I'm totally about it. That is one of the several acceptable answers. The correct answer was mashed potatoes. But we will take stuffing as an answer. That at least gets you partial credit, so you are in the clear. So plenty to discuss this evening. We're gonna jump a little bit of Blues here. You see the title above. Are the Blues actually really that bad? I'm starting to think they are. You know, I would consider myself in the media, around the media now for a couple of years. The longer you're around it, a part of the fandom is always there, but a part of it kind of dies off and you start to see it and understand it from a different perspective. I was very patient on the Blues and what was going on at the beginning of the year, but we're now a quarter of the way into the season and things are still looking really rough right now for St. Louis. So we're going to talk about what is going wrong for the Blues, what has continued to go wrong for the Blues, and why the hell can they not win a game in overtime? Because it is turning into one of the it is becoming the eighth wonder of the world at this point, Daniel. So we're going to dive into that in just a moment. And then the Cardinals. There's the offseason is underway. We're starting to hear some rumors flowing around about some members of the Redbirds that are some trade candidates. There's been some roster movement going on here the last couple of days. So we're going to kind of do some house cleaning as far as all of that goes. So it's going to be a very packed episode. Let's go ahead and take a quick pause. When we return, Blues Talk right here on the Loose Sports Talk podcast. Welcome back to the Loose Sports Talk podcast. Ethan Hannaford, Daniel Hinkamp. We appreciate you being a part of this Thanksgiving episode. There's not really anything Thanksgiving themed about it. Outside of that, I am thankful for all of you listening to this episode. We're going to be getting into some Blues talk here in just a moment, some Cardinals talk later in the episode as well. Just a reminder that if you're watching on the YouTube and you haven't subscribed to STL Sports Central, which is where you can find all of the Loose Sports Talk content, please do so right now. Like the video as well. That would mean an awful lot to us and all of the wonderful people here at STL Sports Central. And we are about a week away, a little under a week away until DraftKings goes live in Missouri. DraftKings is one of our main sponsors here for STL Sports Central. We appreciate them very much. Less than a week, boys and gals. Not discriminating here on the Loose Sports Talk podcast. Okay, let's go ahead and let's dive into some Blues talk, Daniel. I mentioned in the opening segment that things are not going well right now for St. Louis, or about a quarter of the way through. And you could argue since the last time that we talked about this, it's probably been 3 to 4 weeks, that things have arguably gotten worse.
Yeah, they have gotten worse. You mentioned the overtime losses. They can't win a game when they get to overtime. They also can't win a game when they get to shootout, which is also problematic. And the Blues versus 2-goal leads has kind of been the story lately. Blew 2 of them to both to the Flyers, actually, most recently. One at home and then one away this previous week. And yeah, I don't know what to say. When we talked to Randy Carricker earlier in the season, he said he's not worried yet, but he was concerned. I'm getting to the point where I'm worried.
Yeah, I mean, and for good reason, right? I mean, any time that it feels like this team is starting to trend in the right direction, even if it's in a single game. I mean, you talked about the 2-goal lead. How many times this year have you looked at a game midway through or 2 periods through and you're saying, okay, you're in the driver's seat. But unfortunately, the reputation that St. Louis is starting to build a quarter of the way through this 2025-26 season is that no lead is safe. And we've seen that play out in multiple scenarios this year. And it's not even in just the past, couple of weeks. This has been something that has been an issue for St. Louis really from the start of the year. And it has to be better. You have to be able to secure those leads. But you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned the inability to hold on to those 2-goal leads, their struggles in overtime. What for you has been the main thing that has been going wrong? And if it is one of those two things specifically, and it's very fair if that is the answer, what is leading to the struggles in overtime? What is leading to the struggles, the inability to hold on to these leads?
I think they're taking a step back. They get up by 2 goals and they get too comfortable, it seems like, because they take their foot off the gas a little and they play a little more flat-footed. I've seen them get caught puck watching a couple times, and which leads to goals and leaving guys open in the slot and right in front of the net. And that's been a huge issue so far. And just the effort it hasn't been there every single game. They've came out of the gates really flat in a few of their games, especially in the first, I would say, 8 to 10 games that they played. There were several times that they came out flat. I will say an improvement, though they're still not getting the wins that we want. The games are getting closer, and there hasn't been an awful blowout in the past few games. They've been winnable games and games we should have won, but we haven't ended up getting blown out, which I think is a step forward because it shows that the goalies have kind of figured it out a little bit more. Defense still needs to get a little stronger in front of the net and getting in front of shots, but there's a lot of problem. There's a lot of things so far. I think that's one positive thing, but just the effort and coming out flat-footed.
The Blues bottom 5 in the league in goals scored. They're 6th last in goals scored, 26. They're bottom 3 in the league in goals allowed, bottom 3 in goals allowed per game. They are struggling on the penalty kill. There's issues on both sides of the puck right now, Daniel, but if you were to compare one to the other, is there one side of things that you look at and is jumping off in your eyes as more alarming than the other? Or is it just everything is looking rough right now and things got to get figured out?
I think pretty much everything is looking rough right now, and there's a lot of things that need to get figured out. I will say Dalibor Dvorsky, since he came up, he's looked really good, and that's part of the reason that Alexandre Texier is no longer Blue, which I'm sure we'll get into a little later. But it's the whole team right now, and it just seems like the guys aren't all bought in yet, which at this point in the season they should be. And Monty said before the road trip that they are on right now is this could be really good for them. And it's a good chance for them to bond, but they lost to Toronto. They lost to Philadelphia. They almost blew the 2-goal lead this previous Saturday to the Islanders, and got a little lucky towards the end of the game. But there's a lot of things that still need to be fixed.
One of the things that I've noticed has been rather interesting is, you look at the top 4 or the minutes for the top 4 defensemen, and they're through the roof. They're playing a lot of minutes right now. It's early in the year. Eventually, I think that some people are probably going to get concerned about the legs under those 4 guys. Now, they are veterans, but at the same time, they are veterans. So, they're used to it, but perhaps they're not all of them are in the primes of their careers anymore. Do they have the legs under them? We're going to find out. Hopefully, though, we get to the point eventually where, the Blues are able to lean a little bit more on guys like Tyler Tucker, like I think they probably thought they'd be able to during in the preseason coming into the 25-26 season. Logan Mailloux has been up and down. Recently just got recalled from Springfield. Had been really struggling prior to that stint in Springfield, but looked pretty sharp in his handful of games with the Thunderbirds, and now he's back up. Let me ask you this: do you think that small stint of games for Logan Mailloux could do anything for him as far as perhaps being of any more impact now that he's back with the Blues?
I think it could take a little bit of a weight off his shoulders because he scored a goal. He scored a goal when he was there,
He scored a couple.
yeah, he scored a few. But that first one, I think, was the one that he looked really happy. If you look at the replay, he had a big smile across his face once he got that puck in on a one-timer, and I think that's going to help with his confidence. And I think that another thing would help is if maybe I don't know what Monty says to him behind the scenes. I can't speak to that, and I'm not going to speculate either. But something that might help is just, dude, if you see a chance to join the rush, to get up on the rush or a scoring opportunity, do it. We'll have people cover for you on defense. Use your offensive instincts. That's what got you to the NHL. It's how good of an offensive defenseman you are. Use those instincts. Try to get pucks on net, and sooner or later you're going to get a bounce. So,
yeah, I think part of me wonders if
just instilling that confidence, and we'll have somebody cover for you.
Part of me wonders if some of the concern, or some of the area of struggle for a guy like him is that the obviously there is a lot of outside noise that has come in with him. Everything that occurred prior to the NHL draft, and then Zach Bolduc starts off in a very impressive manner in Montreal, and all of a sudden that pressure, probably that outside noise, feels even greater, and you kind of forget what playing your game looks like. You get sent down for a couple of games, you find it again. I wonder, and I hope that he was able to find his confidence down in Springfield, and that we see a better version of him. But there's also a world where we don't, and it continues to be a little bumpy. Now, let me say this. It can't get much worse than it was the first handful of games, but that doesn't mean all of a sudden that he's going to have it figured out. This is still going to be a slow process, and it's going to take time. But like you said, hopefully he can get acclimated a little bit, get involved a little bit more on the offense, and you can start to see that shot of his that we've heard so much about.
Yeah, that's going to be huge for him if he can just do that. Because when he was with the Canadiens organization too, and he was down in Laval for their AHL team, he played really well. And he had a few points when he was up last year with the Canadiens too. And the comparison, like you were talking about with the trade with Bolduc, it's a toxic comparison. If you ask me, they're two different players. Mailloux was a long-term investment. We knew he wasn't going to come in and put up numbers like Zach Bolduc did right from the start, because Zach Bolduc's had a few years in the NHL. We saw him last year put up 19 goals and looked really good in the playoffs too. We knew what was going to happen with getting rid of him. We knew he was going to go score, and the whole point of bringing Mailloux in was for the long-term investment. It wasn't so he was going to step in and play top-line minutes and be one of the best defensemen on the team this year.
There's a couple of things I want to hit on before we get into our next segment, but the first one is Pavel Buchnevich and what has gone wrong for a guy that is currently in the first year of a 6x8 contract with the Blues. 2 goals, 6 assists on the year. Neither of those goals are in 5-on-5. And it's not just the quiet numbers, but it is the multiple big moments, key points in games, in overtimes, where he has had chances to put in the game-winning goals, to prevent the game from ending in overtime. I mean, there's been multiple moments in the past several weeks which make the poor play, the struggles from Buchnevich look that much bigger. What is going wrong for Pavel Buchnevich right now?
Well, first of all, he's not getting the bounces that he was getting earlier in his career. And also, I think the big contract that he just signed, the expectations were that he was still going to keep producing like he was halfway through the season last year, and then even into the season before that. So him coming in and not living up to those immediately, the fans are gonna take notice of that. The media is going to take notice of that, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on. But he's a veteran. He's just not as fast as he used to be, and that comes with age and whatnot. But I can't pinpoint an exact thing that's gone wrong for him. I know he's trying, because we saw he was pretty colorful in a post-game interview a few games back about his play and how he's looked so far this season. And he knows it's not good, but I don't know what's exactly going wrong. But what I do know is that at this point in the year, he's shown that he shouldn't be on the ice in overtime. And I think that's something that needs to start, is to only throw him out there if we feel we really need to.
Yeah, that is a harsh reality for a guy that over the next however many years you're going to pay nearly $50 million to. But unfortunately, it is where they are at with him right now. Couple of other things. Last week, the Blues placed Alexandre Texier on waivers, and then on Sunday, they terminated his contract after he had cleared waivers. And only, a couple hours after that contract was terminated, he was signed by the Montreal Canadiens to a 1-year, $1 million deal. Montreal's been dealing with some injuries, so this will be a guy that has NHL experience that'll be able to fill in immediately in their lineup. So it makes sense for them. Why did it not work out here in St. Louis with Alexandre Texier?
I don't think that, one, he just didn't get the ice time that he needed to really fit into the Blue style play and to really prove himself. And two, it just hasn't worked. It's kind of what happened in Columbus, where his style of play didn't really fit what they wanted, and he came here, and I was one of the people that was really excited for him, because I know the skill he has, and he's a really good skater, but he just hasn't seemed to be getting the minutes he needs, and he's struggled a few times. He's had a few bad turnovers, and he's looked a little sluggish out there a couple times. But I just think it's a simple case of it didn't work out here, and I hope it works out for him at Montreal.
Final thing I want to jump into here before we pause. We talked earlier in the year about, at some point, this is the bad start. It's a fluke, and now it's starting to flip, where people are talking about, well, if this year is truly what they are, was last year a fluke? And based off of what we saw post Four Nations face-off, it is hard. I'm going to have a hard time being convinced that run the Blues went on was a fluke, but simultaneously, can those two things be true? Can both last year not be a fluke and this year be a fluke? I don't know how the math works on that, where St. Louis was legit last year with almost the same exact roster, adding in the offseason, but they are worse off for it. At what point do we start to look and say, this is just who the St. Louis Blues are this year, and maybe last year was a fluke?
Well, I kind of agree with you based on after the Four Nations break. It's going to be really hard to convince myself that was not a fluke, just because of how well that was a fluke. That was a fluke is what I meant to say. Just because of how well they played. And yes, riding the momentum and getting on a streak at the right time, really, it helps. But you still have to be a good team to sustain that. And you took the President's Trophy winners Winnipeg Jets to Game 7. And I still don't think I'm ready to talk about what happened in Game 7. But it's going to be hard for me to convince myself that was a fluke. Now, I don't think it was a fluke last year, but I also don't think it's a fluke this year, which I know they added so much in the offseason, and I thought for sure that this team was going to come out way better. But it just seems like things aren't really clicking so far. And people are like, oh, when they won the Cup in 2019, they started off rough and whatnot. But compare the roster to 2019 to the roster now. It's a big difference. And I don't think last year was a fluke, but I also don't think this year's a fluke.
Well, it's going to be interesting if that's the case to see what exactly Doug Armstrong is going to do with this roster, because we know this. If this year is not a fluke and the struggles that are currently going on are legitimate and this is who they are, then they're going to be moving some pieces at some point. There's already been rumors floating around that St. Louis has already said, hey, we're open for business. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what exactly happens. Hopefully that doesn't end up being the case. Sometimes you need to, shake things up just to shake things up. They did it last year with Brandon Saad. This year, Alexandre Texier, a little bit different. Saad was a guy that was playing every single night. Texier was not, as you mentioned, but it's going to be interesting to see what exactly happens. Any final thoughts here before we take a pause and switch over to Cardinals?
I certainly hope I'm wrong by what I just said about this year being or not being a fluke.
Daniel, I hope you are too. We will just have to wait and see. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, some Cardinals talk, some updating of what has been going on this offseason right here on the Lou Sports Talk podcast. Welcome back to the Lou Sports Talk podcast. He's Daniel Hinkamp. I am Ethan Hannaford. Be sure to like and subscribe STL Sports Central on YouTube. You can find all of our content there, as well as all of the latest breaking St. Louis sports coverage. The Randy Carricker Show, Card Central 365, St. Louis Blues, SLU basketball, St. Louis City SC, Illini basketball, Illini football, Mizzou basketball, Mizzou football. You get the picture. There's stuff going on here all the time, as well as the Lou Sports Talk podcast. I didn't even mention Bernie Miklas, Monday through Friday, putting out content on STL Sports Central. And then be sure to go and check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into some Cardinals talk. It has been a little while since we have done so. We had Polo Asensio on a couple of weeks ago to talk about, recapping the World Series a little bit, the direction that the Cardinals are moving forward in, as well as what's the latest on Yadier Molina and some of the future coaching endeavors for him. But we have gotten to the point where, as mentioned, the World Series has concluded. The GM meetings have come and gone. The offseason is underway. And there have been some talks let me say this. There were some talks during the final few months of the year that the Cardinals are going to be aggressive. They were going to be one of the active teams during this offseason, in large part because of the amount of log jams that they had on this roster, as well as, I think we kind of had an idea that they were going to want to get younger, offload some of those big contracts that they had. That was confirmed by Chaim Bloom in the end of season press conference during the transition from Mo to Bloom. So while no moves have been made yet, it's still early in the offseason. In fact, just in the last couple of days, we've really started seeing some trades occur. Grayson Rodriguez got traded to the Angels. We see Marcus Semien looking like he's going to be getting sent to the New York Mets in a big blockbuster trade. So things are starting to get rolling. But the name, Daniel, that had been brought up a lot here in the last week or so regarding players that are gauging interest league-wide for the Cardinals, the number one guy is Brendan Donovan. We've heard that the Guardians have some interest, Kansas City potentially. Houston has been a team that has been attached to his name. You know that the Dodgers in the past have. The Yankees have had a strong desires for him in the past as well. And Daniel, it's not much of a secret to figure out what exactly teams like about Brendan Donovan. This is a guy that can play everywhere on the diamond, pretty much. Where is there? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. I think he's pitched even before. He was the emergency catcher at one point. He's played practically everywhere on the diamond. So this is a guy that can play just about every single position, and he can do it well defensively. His bat continues to get better year by year.
Yeah.
He has very good plate discipline. He can hit lefties well as well. So it's not like this is a guy that, you're going to have to platoon up there. He can hit lefties well. So you have to take that into consideration. And not to mention, and this is the best part about all of it, he has 2 years of team control left. So whoever gets Brendan Donovan is not going to have to worry about re-signing him or extending him immediately. They're going to have 2 years of team control for a guy that they're going to be able to plug and play wherever they want. They're going to get the same bat from him. He can bat at the top of your lineup. He can bat at the bottom of your lineup. And you're going to be able to do it for very little money. And that is what makes Brendan Donovan one of the most attractive players on the market right now in Major League Baseball, because there is so much attraction around him right now. You have to imagine that the Cardinals have the potential to get some good return for him. If Chaim Bloom plays the cards right, he's going to be able to drive up that price based off of what the demand is for him. If the demand is what we're hearing it is, that return could end up being pretty good for a guy like Brendan Donovan. So, what type of return? The question becomes, what type of return should Chaim Bloom be aiming for then? And I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Daniel. Feel free to throw them in if you have any. I don't have the Cardinals should be going after this prospect or that prospect in these team systems. But here's what I can tell you the Cardinals are by far in need of the most. That is young, controllable starting pitching. It doesn't even necessarily have to be major league talent right now, but they need pieces that are going to be able to contribute right away. That don't have to contribute right away, but are going to be able to in the next couple of years being at the major league level, ready to go. And that is why Brendan Donovan is so important for this market. There isn't anyone else on the St. Louis Cardinals right now, on the Major League club, that is going to be able to bring in the kind of talent that Donovan would. That is a realistic option of being traded. Now, say what, you can say, obviously you could say, Mason Wynn, JJ Weatherholt. We're not talking about those. We're talking about guys that would be realistic options to be traded. As far as those go, Brendan Donovan is the guy. Now, he's 30 years old. So for those that are wondering, why the heck don't the Cardinals consider re-signing him? That's exactly why. St. Louis is not in a place where they are going to be competing for a World Series right now, and probably not for the next couple of years. So why would you have a guy that's 30 right now, has 2 years of control, is nearing his peak, if not peaking right now, and very affordable? Why would you not try to maximize his value on the trade market? Is it hard? Is it painful because he's a fan favorite and he plays the game the right way? He is a Cardinal inside and out. Yeah, it's hard for those reasons, but those are all the reasons exactly why.
Yeah.
If there is demand out there, that you have to make something happen if it's able to speed up the rehabilitation of this Cardinals prospect system. So, Daniel, I don't know what your thoughts are on any of that. If you think that Brendan Donovan is an option that makes sense to trade, are you on board with trading Brendan Donovan, or are you more so on the let's hold off and see if let's keep him in Cardinal red?
I don't think you can't say definitively unless it's the right offer. You have to take the right offer for Donovan, and if it's not there, simply just say no. You have to take it, and if it's not, don't take it. That's all I really have to say about it.
Sure, but do you think that it makes sense if they find that offer to move on from Donovan?
Yes, I do. I think it does make sense.
Well, good. Both of us agree, and I don't have to ridicule you for your decision now, so I'm relieved about that. There's also been multiple other players that the Cardinals are looking into trading: Sonny Gray, Nolan Arenado. The Cardinals currently looking for some suitors. They mentioned during the end of season press conference that they would be looking into trying to move on from both of those guys. Now, both of them have no trade clauses, so it's going to depend on if those guys are okay with wherever they are being sent. They do still have pretty much total control as to where they end up going. But it sounds like the Cardinals are going to be willing to eat some money as well in order to move on from these contracts because they aren't necessarily team friendly right now. Sonny Gray will be entering his age 36 season and will be in the final of a 3-year, $75 million contract. He will make $35 million in 2026, and that's coming off of a year where he had a 4.28 ERA. The FIP was a little bit lower, 3.39, which is his fielding independent ERA. And then he was also able to finish above 200 strikeouts again this year, a 14-game winner for St. Louis, where you saw his highs look really good and his lows look really bad. So still has the stuff to be a top-end starter in baseball. There were times last year, I think, where a lot of people would have said, yeah, he's pitching like a top 10 pitcher in the league, a top 15 pitcher, but you weren't able to get that consistent product from him overall. And I don't think they've really been able to get that consistent product from him over the last couple of years, but there's been more good than bad over these last 2 years from Sonny Gray. It's just once again, the Cardinals are looking to offload some of this big money right now, and this is a contract that they're looking to do that with.
Yeah, it is. And he's aging, and, there's no guarantee that he's going to keep playing like he has been. So you just got to do what you have to do if you're the Cardinals front office. If the offer's there, you take it.
Nolan Arenado is another player that the Cardinals are definitely trying to shop right now, has 2 years remaining, is owed $37 million by St. Louis. He's coming off of a career's worst season offensively, still holding his own defensively, but I think the Cardinals are going to have a tough time finding a suitor that is going to be willing to take the large part of this contract on. So it's going to come down to probably how much is St. Louis willing to eat, I think. But, I think the Cardinals are pretty determined to find a way to move on from Arenado. At least that's what it has seemed like to me. Nolan Arenado, in large part, there's been more good than bad during his time in St. Louis. But when you look at the direction that St. Louis is heading, you look at the direction that Nolan Arenado is heading, they're in different directions. St. Louis looking to get younger, looking to try and find their new core. Nolan Arenado is aging, as is Sonny Gray, but Nolan Arenado is beyond the prime point of his career now, and him playing here as he wants to win a championship. That's not going to happen here. He's not going to be able to help St. Louis get to that point any sooner at this point in his career. So I think it just makes sense for both sides at this point, unfortunately, to find a suitor that is willing to take on as much of that contract as absolutely possible. There's also been some reported interest in the Cardinals' depth at catcher. St. Louis is expected to give Ivan Herrera another go at catcher this year following his elbow surgery, which he is currently recovering from. They also have Pedro Pagés and Jimmy Crooks as major league options for 2026. And not to mention there is three, but the two big name prospects that the Cardinals have at the catcher position, Reinel Rodriguez as well as Leonardo Bernal, are both in the top 100 according to the MLB pipeline. Jimmy Crooks is the 6th ranked prospect in this system. So it wouldn't be a surprise, Daniel, if the Cardinals were to try and offload maybe one or two of those pieces. Offensively talented catchers are always in high demand, and it seems like the Cardinals have a little bit of a stash here when it comes to, we know what Ivan Herrera is offensively. Is the elbow surgery going to help him be able to throw out runners more effectively this year? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but they're going to give it a go. Pedro Pagés, you kind of know what you have in him at this point. Jimmy Crooks got a little bit of a taste of the majors this year. I would be surprised if he was the full-time AAA catcher come the start of the 2026 season. So what does make sense the most for the Cardinals as far as how they should go about handling this catching fiasco that they have? We've mentioned the names that are already there. You have Reinel Rodriguez, the number 3 prospect in the system. Bernal is number 4. Crooks is number 6. He's gotten a taste of the majors. You have Herrera, who you really liked the bat from him this past season. You have Pedro Pagés, who has been very good defensively and has been very effective in working with the pitching staff these last couple of years for the Cardinals. He's also been very impactful with the younger pitching staff as well. So there are pros and cons to all of these guys right now, but as far as what makes sense and how they should handle everything. I don't know if there's a clear-cut answer number one. But what I do know is if the demand for some of these guys out there is legitimate enough, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to at least move on from one of them. And I have to imagine that the favorite for that would probably be Jimmy Crooks. If you looked at where the Cardinals are right now, as far as their major league catching, they want to give Ivan Herrera a legitimate shot at being the guy. So he's going to get a lot of innings. Pedro Pagés, as far as we know, probably will continue to be in the mix. So what do you do with Jimmy Crooks? It doesn't feel like there's a spot, even if he is the backup catcher this year, and let's say they move on from a Pedro Pagés. Even if Jimmy Crooks is the backup catcher, how much is he really going to be catching if they want to give Ivan Herrera a legitimate shot at being the number one catcher? I have to imagine that Jimmy Crooks, if the Cardinals were to move on from any of their catchers in their system, he would probably be the one that makes the most sense. Now, obviously, we don't know what the interest level is. We don't know what the demand is out there for this catching core that the Cardinals have specifically. But if St. Louis was to move on from one specifically, and like I said, he's kind of caught between these two sides of this pipeline where you have the lower levels, where you have prospects that are already viewed higher than him, and above him, you have a guy in Herrera in which it seems like the Cardinals are willing to give another chance for because his bat has proved to play so well at the major league level. He's the one that feels kind of like the odd man out right now. Now, there's a world in which the Cardinals don't make any sort of trades at the catching position. I would be surprised, and here's why. Jimmy Crooks was the guy last year at AAA. Leonardo Bernal just got added to the 40-man roster. At some point, they're going to want to move him up to AAA, and they're going to want to continue to give him innings. Jimmy Crooks, unless they move on from Pedro Pagés, which I would be surprised if they did because I don't think that there's probably going to be that much interest or return out there for a guy like Pagés. Jimmy Crooks is the one that makes the most sense to me. How the Cardinals try and navigate the balance between making sure that they get the right guy behind the plate in the future, but also being able to maximize on having a really strong system of minor league catchers right now. Last thing I want to touch on before we wrap up, the Cardinals non-tendered several players on the 40-man roster this past week, including Jorge Alcala, who was a relief pitcher, left-handed relief pitcher John King, fan favorite Joel Pozo, as well as Sem Robertson, who was acquired in the 2023 trades a couple of years ago when the Cardinals sold off on Jordan Montgomery, Jordan Hicks, Chris Stratton, a couple of those guys. I believe he was in the Montgomery one. Either way, with the moves made, the Cardinals now have 37 players on the 40-man roster. There have been talks about them trying to bring back a guy like Pozo, who was obviously an impact bat off the bench last year at times, but this would be as a minor league piece, as a depth piece if the Cardinals, were to, obviously you hope this never happens, but if they ended up being thin at that position, that's a guy eventually that they could bring back up and rely on. But as of right now, the Cardinals 40-man roster down to 37 players. We'll have to wait and see who exactly gets added in the place of those guys. There is openings right now, whether it be the free agent market or in the trade market. There's a lot to come this season, this offseason for St. Louis, and it's just all getting started. We right here on the Loose Sports Talk will have all of the coverage for you, the latest breaking information, as well as all of us here at STL Sports Central. So be sure to like and subscribe if you have not already. Episode number 88 is a wrap. Have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving, St. Louis.